We are whirling through space, drifting toward eternity. Mystical sparks encircled by loneliness and cold darkness. Are you afraid?
From the late 1960s to the mid-1970s, witchcraft became a bit of a pop culture phenomena. From the witchblatation cinema featured on the silver screen, to the many bands and artists singing about black magic women, it was virtually everywhere. It even invaded the home with shows like The Addams Family Bewitched, depicting witches living seemingly normal lives with their husbands. This rise in the mainstream cultural fascination with witchcraft and the occult coincided with the burgeoning interest stemming from the hippie subculture. Disillusioned with Christianity, these hippies sought out new and alternative forms of religion, with some even flocking to Wicca and witchcraft. It was in this environment that both record companies and witches themselves sought to capture this interest by releasing witchcraft records. Among these records, one stands out to me the most, that being Louise Huebner's Seduction through Witchcraft. Before we delve too deep into this record, I want to give a bit of a rundown on who Louise Huebner was and how she got both Warner Brothers and Louis and B.B. Barron to help her make this record. Both a witch and a third-generation astrologer, she came from a long lineage of witches. In an interview with Vice, Huebner states that her mother, grandmother, and her grandmother's grandmother were all witches, and she began performing psychic readings at the age of 2. However, the first thing she was really known for was for her taped astrological spots on KLAC Radio, a local Los Angeles station, where they came on 12 times a day, every 2 hours. According to Huebner, the station DJs hammed it up whenever her spots came on by playing Old Black Magic as an intro to her tape spots, and they even referred to her as the staff witch. While this isn't why she's known now, it did eventually allow her to develop the skills necessary to attract the attention of the LA County officials, namely her PR skills. Through this noticing, she was able to become the cultural chairman of the 14th District, where she was tasked to organize birthday celebrations for the city. Through her success in organizing these events, she was eventually asked to promote a series of concerts. In her own words, I was asked by the Los Angeles Department of Parks and Recreation to help to promote a series of concerts at the Hollywood Bowl. The invitation was extended because I had produced festivities in 14 separate communities for a LA birthday celebration. The county asked for me to do for them what I had done for the city. According to Huebner, these celebrations were important because they generated a tremendous amount of positive media exposure for the city, which aided in her gaining recognition as someone capable of generating good PR. Through this momentum, she was able to use this as leverage as a way to push for something that was important to her, witchcraft. This opportunity opened itself to her when she noticed one of the programs on the list, namely Folklore Day. None of the other programs leaped out at me, Huebner writes. To this day, I don't know what the other 11 concerts were all about. I had focused so intently on Folklore Day that it caused me to become deaf, dumb, and blind to everything else. As is usual for me when I focus, an electrical overload took place, and the printed title of Folklore Day began to pulsate and vibrate and flicker into brilliant colors. Maybe I heard music, who knows? I went into my creativity mode. It was during this spark of creativity that compelled her to coolly offer the idea of something big, a gigantic spellcast that would increase the sexual vitality of the county. It was an idea that Huebner believed would attract a crowd to the event. On the day of, nearly 11,000 people came, proving Huebner to be correct in her assertion. However, in order to make the spell work and to be given some respect by the media, Huebner thought that she should be made the official witch of LA County. In the week before the spellcast, the title was awarded to Huebner, thus making her official. With the title of Official Witch of LA County awarded to Huebner, now was the time for her to use it to its fullest extent. It adorned the covers of her books, proudly featured in interviews with her, and on the back of her album Seduction through Witchcraft. It's probably the title of Official Witch, Huebner's PR prowess, and the rise in popularity of witchcraft at the time that made the creation of this album possible. So, first and foremost, why is the album called Seduction through Witchcraft? Melanie Zulu does a great job of explaining why in the article Remembering the Era of Witchcraft albums by stating that while the UK records had a more serious and educational tone, in the USA, the witchcraft and occult LPs were very different, more colorful, fun, and sexual in nature. The US records were more of a concoction, mixing together sex appeal and fun, alongside a few important cues from the as seen on TV witch, Morticia Addams. This willingness to dabble in these elements is brought out throughout the album, with sexually charged songs such as Orgies, a Tool for Witchcraft, discussing how orgies provide the concentration of power needed for spellcasting. Or on the Emotional Bondage spell, where she literally asks the listener if their partner is sexy enough to be worth a spellcast. As for the fun and colorful, there are a few absurd spells and rituals featured on the album. The song Self-Fascination, Ritual for Increased Power, features saying your name 99 times in mirror while being surrounded by ground-dry seahorse. The Turkish Bean spell features stitching a bean into a handkerchief with exactly 100 stitches. And finally, the Isis full moon ring for magical protection features boiling and burning your birthstone ring until the next full moon in order for it to be blessed by the goddess Isis. As for the Morticia Addams comparisons, the Standard Speaker article Modern Witch Would Be Wrong for Macbeth opens with the line, "So you think a witch is a crackling old crone with stingy hair and a long nose? Well, meet Louise Huebner." Throughout the interview, the article makes sure to point out her physical appearance and attire, thus separating her from one stereotype, but instead places her into another, namely the one constructed by the character Morticia Addams. From her slim black stocking legs to her shiny black dress with plunging neckline and how she and her husband live in an appropriately haunted old house, the article leaves little to no room on who you should be imagining being interviewed, and I don't think it's Huebner. While I'm not entirely sure as to whether Huebner wanted this characterization or not, I wouldn't be too surprised if she purposefully leaned into it. Part of this is revealed during the interview, where she recognizes why witchcraft and the occult were exploding in popularity during this time. She states that there's a strong need for knowledge that you can be powerfully in control of your life situation, and in the 60s, yeah, people wanted that control. From the Vietnam War and its infamous draft to the amount of people protesting and wanting civil rights, I think it's easy to see why witchcraft would be appealing to a lot of people, and Huebner recognizes why too. She had a very keen understanding of what made witchcraft appealing to people, and thus she made books and a record that offered that. Like, the reason why this record is called Seduction Through Witchcraft isn't just because it offers seduction spells, it also offers power and control. I mean, in the modern day, we're once again witnessing a rise in the popularity of paganism and witchcraft because people, once again, want the power and control. It gives this album and other witchcraft and occult records a real longevity because there will never not be a time when people desire the control offered by this album. But beyond that control, however, this album offers something else. A contribution by some of the most important innovators of electronic music history, those being Louis and B.B. Barron. Their contributions to this album are invaluable, and their work on it is just as important as Huebner's contributions were in creating the unique vibe and atmosphere of this record. I think that by reducing their contributions on this album to a footnote, I think you also reduce this album to being another cultural curio rather than what I think it should be remembered as, a pioneering piece of electronic music. I think their most notable contributions are on the tracks Introduction Gods, where the listener is thrown into this thick, spacey atmosphere coupled with cackling laughter and voices peeking in and out of the mix. Another track that I enjoyed their work on was on the song The Demon Spell for Energy, where there's this creepy theremin lurking in the mix along with this loud, thick sound pulsating in the background. Like, their work on here is haunting and couples excellently with Huebner's breathy and reverb-drenched vocals. You can really tell that this album was a collaborative effort and that both parties respected each other. Huebner herself even described that the association was very cosmic and that, over the course of the production, they bonded, and I think it absolutely shows. In regards to the music on this record, it's very hard to describe, it's just something you have to listen to. It seems random at points, disorganized noises that ebb and flow throughout the record, almost like the music has a mind of its own. As much as I want to try to describe their process, I'm probably going to fail, so I think it's best if B.B. Barron describes it herself. In a 1997 interview with Eric Chasselow, B.B. describes their process as such.
We thought of our circuits as characters in a script and used the unfolding of pitches as they came out of the circuits. We didn't control the pitches at all. The emotions which seemed to come out of the circuits, such as romance, monsters, space travel, were almost always uppermost in importance. Each circuit we built had lifespans of their own, and I just can't stress that enough because that was always amazing to me. And once they died, we never could revive them. We always were innocents with a sense of wonder and awe of the beauty coming from the circuits. I mean, we would just sit back and let them take over. We didn't want to control them at all.
Throughout the interview, she makes sure to point out how they try not to control them, to let them move freely and unabated, which is why the music sounds the way it does. It almost makes the record breathe with a life of its own, adding to the atmosphere of it. I can't really think of anyone more suited to make a record like this other than the Barons, to be honest. And I think that makes this album even more special and something worth preserving and valuing. Seduction Through Witchcraft is an interesting relic from a bygone era, and an important album to the history of electronic music. Made by a witch and a duo of mad scientists, it's a fascinating record to say the least. The rituals of the past coupled with the electronic soundscapes of the future, it's truly unlike anything else, and trying to describe it doesn't even come close to doing this album justice. It's just something you have to experience with an open mind, and I'm pretty sure that's what Louise Huebner and the Barons wanted. Everyone involved contributed and created a fascinating record of opposites. One that not only captured the interests of the witches and the occultists of the 60s, and continues to do so, but it's also one that captures the interest of electronic music fans. It's a record that only could have been made in the 60s, and I think Huebner sums it up perfectly. No other decade could match the 60s. The vibes were right.